Up, up, up. And welcome to Vintage Garage. This is episode 26, our last show of this season, and we'll wrap up a few loose ends today. Several weeks ago, we took you along on our trip to Reston to look at a Titan Mk6 project car for sale. We made an offer to buy the car, and a few weeks later our offer was accepted. Today we'll unload the car, sort through it, and see what we got. Then we'll show video from a field trip we took a month ago to the SVRA vintage races at Virginia International Raceway. It was the fifth and final round of this season's North America Chapter SRCC Championship for Sports 2000 cars, and we'll cover the race. Lastly, we'll continue the assembly of the Titan Mk9 project car we've been restoring. So stay tuned, we have a full show today. Glad you're here. We drove over to Reston last night to pick up the Titan Mk6, and it's in the back of the A-van. Let's have a look and see what we bought. We got a nice set of steel wheels with the car. 2 of them are loose, and 2 are on the rear of the car with street tires mounted. The paint is peeling on the engine cover, but otherwise it looks to be in pretty good shape. Likewise, the nose for the car is in good condition. The electric winch in the A-van makes it easy to load and unload cars. The car rolls freely and nothing seems to be locked up. The car was last on the track in 1979. The first step is to remove the wheels that are on the car. The wheels on the back of the car are the steel wheels that match the 2 loose wheels we unloaded. We want to get a look at the rear brakes as well. We'll pull down the best used set of Dunlop monoposto legal racing tires that we have in our rack. We want to mount the correct tires on the steel wheels to make sure they fit on the car and don't foul in the brakes or steering. There's a big difference in section width between the racing tires and the street tires. The wheels on the front of the car are cast aluminum Revolution wheels. They won't be legal on the Mk6 for vintage racing, but we can use them on the Titan Mk9 we're restoring. We'll take them off and set them aside. We'll take the 4 steel wheels and 4 racing tires over to Executive Tire on Goody Drive in Rockville and get them mounted up. The car came with this Atta Shake case. Let's have a look inside. It looks like this case hasn't been opened in 20 years. It contains a bunch of gear sets for the Hewland transmission. The foam protecting the gears has turned to mush, and instead of protecting the gears, it may have ruined them. The foam is stuck to the metal and has caused quite a bit of corrosion to form on the gear sets. We'll see if we can save them. The first step is to wash the gear set in lacquer thinner. We see that the thinner doesn't dissolve the foam, and really doesn't do much good. Next, we use a wire brush to remove as much of the foam as we can. Under the foam, there's a lot of corrosion and some pitting. We use a Scotch-Brite pad on the inner surface of the gear. This surface forms the outer race for the bearing. It must be smooth or else it'll chew up the bearing. Lastly, we use a bit of fine steel wool. The inner bearing surface looks pretty good, and we think it'll be okay. We still need to remove the remainder of the foam that's stuck to the gear teeth. To do that, we'll use the wire brush wheel mounted in our bench grinder. Each gear set consists of 2 gears. One gear goes on the lay shaft and the other on the pinion shaft. We spend about 10 minutes on each of the 2 gears. We rinse the gear set in thinner and then apply a light coating of WD-40. The gears are a matched set, and to keep them from getting separated, we put them together with a tie wrap. We'll do the same thing with the next gear set. It's a 1436, and it's about the lowest gear you can get for a Hewland. We'll wash it up and spend 20 minutes cleaning it up. It came out nice as well. We'll put it off to the side with the others. It took us about 4 hours to clean up all the gears in the box. We'll carefully sort through the remaining foam to make sure we didn't miss anything. It looks like that's it. We'll put the case aside. And that's the last one. That one's a 2229. We can't call them new, but they're just as good as new for our purpose. They'll work just fine. This red toolbox also came with the car. Let's see what's in there. Filtron filter compound, I don't know what that is. Now there's a nice bonus. We got a lot of carburetor jets. We have a belt for the water pump and a gasket set. Little Motocraft feeler gauge. More jets. Couple of spare spark plugs. All that's to the good. Have a couple of spacers. I don't know where we're going to need those, but perhaps one set of the wheels doesn't clear one end of the car right. Well, there you go. This box has all the lug nuts for one set of the aluminum wheels in it. That'll be real handy. Alright, those are the original lug nuts for the Titan Mk6. What a great find. 2, 4, 6, there's 8 of them in there. We've got 8 of them on the car, and here's the other 8. Here's what we're really looking for. Here's the rest of the lug nuts for the Revolution wheels. So we got a complete set of lug nuts for the Revolution wheels. We got a complete set of lug nuts for the appliance wheels, and we got a complete set of lug nuts for the steel wheels. That's a real mess. That was the air cleaner for the car, and the foam was turned to mush. Clean that up and figure out how to reuse that. It's kind of an original piece. We can throw the bag away. This is a real nice piece. This is a Schenkel air horn for the carburetor, and the car came with a lot of Schenkel documentation, so maybe it had a Schenkel motor in it at one time, or maybe it still does. That's a pretty nice piece. We'll set that over by the car. These are trailing links for the lower rear part of the car. We have 2 nice spares. We also have a nice spare front A-arm. And a spare rear A-arm. And a spare front A-arm for the other side. This is the original battery tray, and it's been modified. To make this original, we'll want to take out this wood piece and this wood piece. This strap on the top is homemade, but this is the original strap that came from Titan. This is the top and bottom to the air cleaner. We can use those. This is the original oil tank to the car. Still looks to be usable. Probably this was replaced because it was so beat up it wasn't pretty anymore. We're back from Executive Tire, and we've installed the steel wheels and racing tires on the car. Since all the foam we've encountered so far has deteriorated, we think we better have a look at the fuel cell in the car. The first step is to remove the cockpit surround. The fuel cell is under the seat. We'll remove the seat and set it aside. The chassis looks nice and straight and appears to be in good shape. That rubber bag in front of the rollover bar is the fuel cell. The engine appears to be complete and in good shape. We changed the engine oil while the tires were being mounted on the wheels. Sure enough, the foam in the fuel cell is turned to powder. We use a long screwdriver to carefully work it out of the cell. You can imagine what this would do if it got into the carburetor. When we finish getting all the foam out, we rinse the cell with fresh gas and install it back in the car. Finally, it's showtime. We prime the carb with gasoline and hit the starter button. The motor starts instantly and we watch the gauges. The oil pressure looks good and the motor sounds great. We'll let the water and oil come up to operating temperature. The Smith's chronometric tach works properly, and the original water temperature and oil pressure gauges look good. A friend has called to say he wants the car, so we'll stop here and let him finish it up. It's mid-October and we've come down to Virginia International Raceway near Danville, Virginia for the SVRA Season Finale Vintage Races. It's round 5 of the North America chapter SRC C-Series for Sports 2000 cars. For the weekend, the Sports 2000 cars are in a combined group with other classes of similar performance. It's called Group 5 and 7. The group is on the track now for their qualifying session. We're standing at the beginning of the pit straight. That's John Galson in the white Taiga SC85 Sports 2000. That's David Califato in the white March 83S Sports 2000 and Tom Coppage in the gray March 81S Sports 2000. When that session ends, Grid Chief Sandy Collins sends the next group out on the track. This group is mainly production cars from the 50s and 60s, but also includes some older sports racing cars. It's also a combined group called Groups 1, 3, and 4. There sure are a lot of cars. We're over in turn 3 to watch the action. The next group out is a feature race for Super Vs and Monoposto Formula B and Formula 2 cars. We move further down the track to turn 4 to watch the large production cars in the next group. was a break in the action before the feature races, so we headed over to the paddock and interviewed Alan Childress, one of the stars of the North America SRCC series, to learn more about his Sports 2000.
My name is Alan Childress. I'm from Roanoke, Virginia, and I drive a 1987 Royale RP42A. Let me show you a few things about this car. This car has dual brake master cylinders, front and rear, plus a clutch master cylinder, and we have a brake bias adjustment in the cockpit of the vehicle so you can adjust the brake front and rear. We have a tray on the front of the car, which the nose fits on, helps in the aerodynamics of the automobile. This car has double A-arms, upper and lower, has coilovers, springs on the shocks, which are adjustable. The motor in this car is a 2-liter Ford engine that was actually from the 1973-74 Ford Pinto. The engine is balanced, the pistons and rods are lightened, the clutch is lightened, we run a smaller flywheel. We have a dry sump lubrication system, plus we have a 2-barrel Weber carburetor. The engine in its current stage is about 135 horsepower. We build this engine ourselves. This chassis on the Royale is a full monocoque chassis from the forward end all the way back through the rear of the car. The engine sits within the monocoque pylons. Coupled to the engine, we have a Hewland Mk9 gearbox, 4 forward speeds and 1 reverse. Inboard disc brakes. We have a tuned exhaust system off the engine. The car has been running great, and I'm looking forward to the feature.
We're up on the grid for the start of the feature race for Groups 5 and 7. Dave Handy's on the pole in the McLaren M6B. Next is Alex Quattlebaum in the Lola T294, Peter Gullick in the Chevron B23, and Bruce Duff in the Porsche Fab car. Scott Livingston, his first SRCC car, the number 21 black and white March 83S. The other Sports 2000s are further back in the grid. Alan Childress is in the yellow Royale RP42A. David Califato is in the white March 83S. Tom Coppage is in the dark gray March 81S. John Galson is in the white Taiga SC85. The field looks lined up as the pace car leads them down the roller coaster and into turn 16. As the cars come around at the end of lap 1, Dave Handy begins to pull out a lead in the McLaren. Scott Livingston, his first Sports 2000 car in the black and white March. Alan Childress in the yellow Royale is moving up to challenge Scott for the lead in class. John Galson has moved up to third in class with David Califato right on his rear. Tom Coppage is running first in SRCC Class H with his gray March Sports 2000. When they come around again, the order is the same. There's Scott Livingston with Alan Childress gaining. John Galson moving up. David Califato and Tom Coppage right behind and gaining overall positions. At the end of the race, the order of finish among the Sports 2000 cars was Scott Livingston first, Alan Childress second, David Califato third, and John Galson fourth. Tom Coppage had mechanical woes before the last lap and pulled in, but finished first in SRCC Class H. We don't have a lot of time left in the show today, but we do have time to work on the Titan Mk9 a little bit. The last time we worked on the car, we installed the suspension and the steering rack and completed the car to the rolling chassis stage. Today we're going to install the pedals and the master cylinders, and that's the first step in getting the brakes working. So let's get started. The Titan Mk9 Formula Ford has 3 pedal assemblies. This is the accelerator pedal assembly. We're going to install that last. This rod is the support for the clutch pedal. We'll install that second. The brake pedal mounts on this complicated shaft, and it works the master cylinders for both the front and rear brakes. This bearing fits inside of this tube on the shaft, just like that. And then each of these fittings connects to a different master cylinder. By moving these fittings left and right, the single pedal can apply more brake pressure to the rear or the front of the car. It's quite an interesting patent, and all the English cars of this period had this exact same setup. We'll put a little WD-40 on that. And we'll insert that bearing in its proper place. We'll put that fitting back on the other side. And we'll put its lock nut on. A bolt goes through here to mount it to the chassis, and then the brake pedal goes on top here. The brake pedal itself for this car didn't seem to be nickel plated. Looked like it was originally painted silver, so we painted it silver. We'll tighten it up and adjust that angle to fit our foot once we get it in the car. The brake pedal is going to mount on this chassis bracket right here. It's a pretty simple arrangement, it just fits in there. We just put a 3/8 bolt through there. Now we need to set the angle of this to match the driver's feet. Before we do that, let's hook up the master cylinders. The two master cylinders are almost identical. This is the one for the front brakes. Master cylinders mount right on this plate on the front of the chassis. Let's move the camera around back inside the car so we can see how the master cylinders hook up to the balance beam and the pedal. For a short driver, you barely screw the rods in, but for a long-legged driver, you screw them in quite a ways. We'll put it right about in the middle. Now all we need to do is tighten all of the nuts that we've put on by hand. And that finishes up the installation of the brake master cylinders and the brake pedal. Now let's move on and work on the clutch pedal. It's very similar, but it only has a single master cylinder. The pedal for the clutch is identical to the pedal for the brake, and again we painted this part silver. This is the clevis that takes the place of that balance beam on the brakes. It's just a single part. Bolts across the pedal assembly right here, and then the clutch master cylinder rod that works the piston just screws into that fitting right there. Clutch pedal just bolts into this bracket right here on the chassis. We'll tighten that up last. We've pushed the clutch master cylinder through the hole, and we can screw it into the clevis real easily. This is the last pedal, and it's the accelerator pedal. Unlike the brake and clutch pedal, the pedal is part of the arm assembly. It's a one-piece assembly. The accelerator pedal mounts on a single bolt that goes through a tube here on the chassis. There's a little bit of fresh paint in there. Put a washer there to make like a bearing for it. Let's put the pedal on there. There's one other small part for the accelerator pedal, and it's this stop. And this stop has got a threaded shaft on it, and we put a jam nut on it here. It screws into this little bracket on the chassis. Provides a stop for the accelerator pedal. Without that, if a driver gets excited and pushes too hard on the pedal, he can break the accelerator cable, and then he's stuck. But with that set there, when the accelerator pedal comes up, it hits that and it's a stop for it. So you adjust the throttle cable so that it's just barely at the end when the stop is reached. That completes the assembly of the pedals and master cylinders for the car. The next time we work on the car, we'll start installing the brake slave cylinders and all the brake tubing. That's it for this week at Vintage Garage, and that's it for this season. Next season on Vintage Garage, we'll have more restoration projects, more field trips, and more racing action. We hope you'll come back. So until next time, thanks for coming. Glad you were here. Keep the shiny side up. We'll see you next season. If you'd like more information about any of the projects we've worked on today, please visit our website at www.vintagegarage.com. There's a link to our email address on the website. Please email us. We'd like to hear from you. Till next time, keep the shiny side up. Thanks for coming. See you next week.